He thought keeping the box sealed would keep the past compliant. On a frost-blue morning in February, an accession number dared to disagree. They celebrated the clean audit, the ledger's margin quietly argued otherwise. When the lid finally opened, policy wasn't the only thing that would answer. Stay with me till the very end, because this will trace a policy no one enforced, a file everyone forgot, and the day an institution had to answer in public for what the paper never stopped saying. The municipal archives smelled like winter coats and brittle glue. Mara Chen, interim archivist, slid cotton gloves over cold fingers and stared at a banker's box labeled Parks and Facilities, 1996 to 1999. City Hall's renovation had sent dozens of such boxes to her lonely basement. She logged the accession number, feeling that familiar curiosity, how ordinary paper rearranges power. Upstairs, the council rehearsed at Heritage Pride speech. Down here, Pride had staples and rust. Routine intake, her supervisor had said. Routine never had this weight. Mara brushed dust from the lid, noticing a faint notation, hold per PM directive. PM, past manager? Or project manager? The handwriting leaned hard, as if bracing against weather. She penciled it in her log, adding a small star beside it. Who wrote you? She murmured to the box. The radiator clanked, heat felt like an apology for the building. Someone upstairs laughed through a wall. The old labels never laughed. Someone in that office would later wish they'd saved the first version. She opened the box. Inside, manila folders, brittle photocopies, a green notebook with a split spine. On top, a letter dated March 3, 1997, stamp received. The letter acknowledged a complaint about the sudden removal of mature elms from Riverview Park. Approved per maintenance needs. No signature, only typed initials. False comfort, Mara whispered, naming the move, an answer that closed nothing. She logged the letter, feeling the narrative try to stay asleep. We kept our trees, she remembered her grandmother saying of another city. Riverview Park was a family place. She'd grown up near it, summers of carousel music and fall soccer. The letter's tone, neutral and cold, bothered her. She looked for attachments. A memo from facilities described root disease and liability mitigation, citing a consultant report not included. The green notebook had a strip of masking tape, RB field log. RB. Another set of initials. The ink bled through thin pages like thoughts through sleep. At the time, no one noticed the blank space in the log. The green notebook's first page, February 10th, trees marked per directive, community rep upset. The initials RB matched a signature stamp on work orders found deeper in the box. One page had a smear where a line had been erased. Erase is policy, her mentor once joked. No policy is the shape of erasures. Mara scanned pages, downloading them into the archive database. On page 6, consultant advised defer, PM said proceed. That was not in the official memo upstairs. The story began to assert a different spine. She found a folded sheet tucked inside the notebook's back cover, a typed resolution draft thanking the city for swift removal. The signature line was blank. It was praise written before a vote. A predatory applause. She set it aside. Outside, snow feathered the windows. Silence felt like a witness taking a breath. She labeled the sheet draft A undated. A small thrill, that moment when paper stops being quiet. The draft resolution existed before anyone voted. It would matter later that praise had a timestamp without a meeting. Upstairs, the city clerk, Warren Keene, read off agenda items for the historic subcommittee. Mara listened through her ceiling speakers, the building's old wiring a reluctant intercom. Archival intake is ongoing, he said. No concerns. She glanced at the green notebook and smiled without humor. No concerns was a pillow phrase. She slid the hold per PM directive box label into a plastic sleeve, marking it chain of custody active. She emailed Keene, Riverview Files, missing consultant report? He replied instantly, everything's in the box. Mara printed the email. The printers were sounded like someone thinking too loudly. She compared dates, the letter, March 3rd, the notebook entries, February, the draft resolution, undated. A triangle of intent. She checked the ledger slip taped inside the box lid, someone had signed it out in 2001. Initials, W.K. Keene. He had touched this before. Her fingertips tingled, archivist's intuition. On the third shelf, a binder of Parks budgets for the late 90s, line items that built and erased places. At the time, no one noticed the margin initials. The budget showed a consultant fee paid in February 1997. Vendor, North Prairie Arborists, $14,600. Purpose, Riverview Canopy Health Assessment. But the facility's memo had implied disease and hazard were known. The consultant's report, if it existed, would show either disease or a different truth. She tried the city's aging file server, searching NPA report. A JPEG scan 19 years ago surfaced, page 2 of something, listing elms by diameter, noting no immediate hazard observed, recommend phased monitoring. The official language inhaled. And then a new form appeared. Page 2 meant page 1. And pages 3, 4. The JPEG's metadata had been stripped, a scan from an IT clerk long retired. Mara wrote to Records IT, any legacy tapes of 97 Parks Committee docs? The reply pinged back, we have DDS3 cartridges, playback is uncertain. She exhaled into her scarf. If tape existed, history existed as magnetic whispers. She labeled it, Shifting Truth Candidate. She weighed her next move, stay in the basement, or push upstairs onto carpet. Someone upstairs would later claim they never saw the JPEG. She walked her evidence to the clerk's office. Keene's smile was varnish, years of meetings had taught it not to peel. Mara, the hero of dust, he joked. She placed the printed JPEG on his desk. Where's the full consultant report? He glanced, and his smile worked harder. We relied on facilities, he said, a sentence that sounded like policy. Those were storm years. She pointed, no immediate hazard. Why were trees removed? He tapped the paper, a little too carefully. Context, he said. Context is where stories get lost or found. Keene returned a day later with a new letter, freshly scanned, dated March 10, 1997, thanking the city for protecting the public at Riverview. The signature, a downtown business association rep who had advocated for cleaner sightlines. False comfort arrived under a different letterhead. See, he said. Broad support. She nodded, filing it under supporting opinions, not science. Outside, a bus shuddered by. Mara felt the mechanical rhythm of proof-forming teeth. The notebook's erased line pressed against her attention like a bruise that remembers. Support existed, so did the consultant note of no immediate hazard. Their contradiction would matter. She requested the DDS3 tapes. The IT room smelled like coin machines and old ozone. We can try, the tech said, cueing a drive that ticked like thawing ice. A directory bloomed on a beige monitor, parkfac/97_mar. Inside, npa_elm.do, parks_min_mar12.txt, resol_draft_a.doc. She swallowed. The draft file name matched the undated praise in her box. She opened the minutes text. Line scrolled, public comment, Mr. Lucero, opposed removal until independent assessment, chair, matter deferred. But the trees were removed on March 5, according to work order logs. The minutes said deferred, the work orders said done. The report said monitor. The letter said liability. The draft said thank you. The box said hold. Mara thought of institutional amnesia, the way decisions dissolve into we don't recall. She imagined the elms, stumps bright as bone under spring light. She printed minutes and stapled them to the JPEG. She entered a note, sequence anomaly, action before deliberation. Someone in that room would later insist everyone agreed. When paper learns to speak, memory stops being polite. She visited the park's yard. A man with hands like tool handles showed her a shelf of old binders. "RB," he said, tapping the green notebook's twin. "Rob Baines. Retired." He kept everything. Inside a plastic sleeve, a photocopy of the consultant's first page. Summary: elm stand healthy overall, prune 5, remove 1 severely decayed. The work order had authorized removal of 23. Managers pushed, the man said. Said new sightlines help a new development. Mara's palms heated against the plastic. The word push can be a policy's quiet alias. Back at her desk, she rolled her chair an inch away and stared at her walls, filing guidelines, ethics policy, and chain of custody chart. The ethics poster, blue letters over a citizen silhouette read, "Records protect rights." She thought about whose rights. In '97, letters to the editor had praised fresh openness along the river. Openness had meant absence. She wrote an internal memo, recommendation, release Riverview files as public record set, initiate provenance review. She copied the city attorney, her pulse deliberately steady. At the time, no one noticed an odd phrase in the draft resolution. City Attorney Daly appeared in her doorway, scarf unwinding like a question mark. "You want to release a set that implicates process gaps," she said, neutral as concrete. "Yes," Mara said. "Because the gaps aren't abstract, they're paperwork." Daly scanned the printouts. "This touches procurement, parks, clerk's office," she said. "Riverview is nostalgia heavy." "Nostalgia isn't a shield," Mara replied. Daly's eyebrow ticked, conceding fact if not timing. "We'll convene a review," she said, tucking the JPEG into a folder. "Bring your box. And your gloves." They met in a windowless conference room with carpet that remembered old coffee. Keene, Daly, a parks deputy named Alvarez, and an IT tech with eyes like sleep. Mara laid out the artifacts, green notebook, draft resolution, minutes, and consultant pages. "Sequence anomaly," she repeated. Alvarez said, "Storm years, you said," to Keene. Keene kept his smile under audit. "Public pressure," he offered. "Risk management," he added. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner in time. Mara turned the notebook to the erased line. "What was here?" she asked. The erased line in RB's log would not stay erased. Its absence had a shape. Daly read aloud from the recovered first page, "Remove 1 decayed elm." She tapped the budget binder. 23 removals authorized beyond recommendation. On whose authority? Keene exhaled. Facilities director, under hazard mitigation policy. But hazard wasn't present, Mara said, pointing to no immediate hazard. Alvarez frowned. "We all remember wind damage." Memory leaned. Paper stood. The IT tech spoke softly. "There's a deleted track on the tape, might be a prior draft of minutes." Silence stretched, a page turned without hands. Daly nodded. "Recover it." IT pulled the tape through a second pass, coaxing ghosts into text, parks_min_mar5_prev.txt. The screen hissed, then wrote, "Motion to authorize tree removal, failed 3-4, Chair, revisit upon receipt of consultant summary." That was March 5th. The trees fell the same day. Mara touched the screen like a relic. "Failed vote," she said. "Action anyway." Daly's jaw clicked. "Process breach." Keene rubbed his temple. "I don't remember this version," he said, which did not make it untrue. Paper doesn't need memory to exist. They turned to the erased line in RB's notebook. Under rake light, the pencil's ghost revealed itself, called PM, told proceed per visibility initiative, said BA waiting. BA, Business Association. Visibility initiative wasn't policy, Daley said. It was branding, Keene muttered. The draft resolution, predated applause, tried to backfill legitimacy. We need BA correspondence, Mara said. Alvarez sighed, a man inheriting decisions he didn't make. I'll check the archives of commerce. Someone in that office would later wish they'd kept the first email chain. At her station, Mara searched for Visibility Initiative. A PDF surfaced, a 1996 business corridor plan, renderings of open vistas and clean lines, trees as green dots where convenient. Partner with the city for safety sightlines, it read. Safety is a word with many pockets. She printed it, stapled it beneath the failed vote minutes. Shifting Truth had acquired a slogan. She thought of her grandmother in the park, hands on the rough bark, telling stories in Mandarin about elm spirits. Tree's record too, her nine I would say. The box whispered its agreement. Alvarez returned with letters. A BA board member had written on March 1st, "We appreciate swift action to address line-of-sight concerns before spring traffic." He'd CC'd the facilities director. Appreciate swift action masqueraded as a request, it functioned as an instruction. The facilities director's reply, "Will proceed per hazard prevention." Hazard as theater. Daley circled swift. That's pre-authorization, she said. Keene stared at the table as if it could give him his past back in a better order. Paper offered only clarity. Mara drafted a finding memo. Evidence suggests removal occurred after failed vote, justified by misapplied hazard policy and pre-commitment to BA plan. Consultant recommended monitoring, not removal. She added, recommend public release, consider acknowledgement and policy correction. She printed 2 copies, signed and dated, Stewardship Small Ceremony. She placed the green notebook on top, like a hand on a shoulder. The radiator sighed, the building agreed. Someone would call this overreach. She called it provenance. The words failed vote and proceed per initiative would be the hinge of what came next. The mayor's office heard release and convened a context briefing. They preferred context, it breathed around facts. Mara sat at the end of a glossy table opposite badges and suits. A communications officer asked, "Is there legal exposure?" Daley answered, "Past conduct, misapplication of policy, likely apology, and fix." The officer nodded like a metronome adjusting tempo. "Then we tell the story ourselves," he said, smiling at Keene. "Heritage, lessons learned." "And truth," Mara added, throat tightening. The officer's smile thinned. "Truth complicates choreography." They prepared a public packet. Keene tried to omit the failed vote minutes. Daley slid them back in. "Irrefutable," she said. "The BA letter?" "In." "The consultants, no immediate hazard?" "In." "The erase line, photographed under oblique light?" "In." Mara included the ledger slip showing WK 2001, because chain of custody is its own testimony. The packet formed like a spine: complaint, false comfort, shifting truth, proof. The mayor scheduled a hearing for Thursday, 6 p.m. Paper would sit under lights. Someone would discover their memory bending toward the page. Thursday, the chamber filled with winter coats and old arguments. Mara watched from the staff table, palms damp under gloves. A woman in her 70s, hair like white thread, spoke first. "Those trees were our shade," she said. "They taught my son patience." Her voice trembled, then steadied. "We were told it was safe. But safety wouldn't do it that way." The crowd murmured agreement, memory harmonizing at last. The BA chair waited, face calm like a screensaver. Paper glowed in the projector. Keene read a prepared statement. In 1997, the city acted under storm recovery pressures and conflicting guidance. He said acted, not removed. Words tucked themselves in. Daley interjected, documentation shows removal after a failed vote and prior to consultant summary, misapplication of hazard policy occurred. The chamber made a sound like weather. The BA chair leaned into the mic. We advocated for vitality, he said. Visibility improves commerce, and commerce pays for parks. He smiled at his applause line. Paper waited its turn to disagree. Mara projected the erase line revealed, called PM, told proceed per visibility initiative, said BA waiting. She followed with the failed vote minutes, then the consultants, no immediate hazard. She kept her voice investigative, not angry. Records show action preceded deliberation, she said. Records show recommendations differ. The BA chair blinked, then said, those logs can be misinterpreted, field notes artificial. The room bristled. Field workers shifted in seats. He wrote what he was told, a man said softly from the back. Paper has hands. A council member asked, who authorized the removal? Silence found chairs. Keene inhaled. The facilities director asserted hazard authority, he said. Mara added, against consultant assessment. Daly said, that was a process failure. The mayor leaned forward. Then we repair the process, she said. And we say it out loud. She turned to the BA chair. Visibility isn't a policy, she said. It's interesting. We serve the public interest, which includes truth. For a moment, the building tilted toward candor. Outside, snow had turned to rain. Action before deliberation entered the record that night. It would not leave. Accountability began in paperwork. The city rescinded the old hazard policy, replacing director discretion with evidence threshold and public notice. They issued an apology. We removed trees against the process, we regret it. No adjectives. No weather. The BA sent a letter of mutual understanding, which still tried to say safety. The field worker, RB, sent a handwritten note, wish we'd been heard. Mara filed it under testimony voluntary. The apology traveled farther than expected. Local news gave it 7 minutes. Consequence names itself in calendars and budgets. They added a plaque at Riverview, not about renewal, but about amends. Mara walked the path where stumps had once said done. Young saplings, disease-resistant elms, had been planted in a measured line. It would be years before shade returned, repair lives on a longer clock than removal. She ran fingers over bark that fit like a promise. She thought of Nai, trees remember. Institutions can, too, if we teach them how. Someone at City Hall would later push for removal of the plaque. Paper would hold the argument steady. The BA chair resigned quietly, citing time for new leadership. The former facilities director gave a short interview. We did what we thought was right with information at hand. The reporter asked about the consultant report. He said he hadn't seen it. But the email chain showed he'd been CC'd. Daly released the CC list, a small ledger of accountability. The public shrugged at the resignation, then nodded at the policy change. Irrefutable proof doesn't always roar, sometimes it settles like a stone in a river, changing the current. In the basement, Mara cleaned the green notebook's cover with a dry sponge, sealing it in an archival sleeve. She wrote a label card, Baines Field Log, 1997 Riverview removal, includes erase line recovered under oblique light. She added a small description of the sequence anomaly, with references. The card felt like a coda. The city's website published the Riverview dossier, search indexed, no paywall. A public records request had already pinged her inbox, thank you for posting. She smiled. The thank you belonged to the paper. She presented at the state archivists conference, when paper refuses to be quiet. She spoke about false comfort letters, shifting truths in minutes, irrefutable proof arriving with patience and tape drives. She kept names out, kept dignity in. A librarian asked, how do you keep neutrality? By letting the record speak first, she said. And refusing to let convenience be an author. Afterward, an older man from a coastal town said, we have a box like that. I've been afraid to open it." She offered coffee and courage. Back home, Mara received a letter, paper, blue ink. "I'm Mr. Lucero," it read in a careful hand. "I was the one who spoke that night, opposed removal. We thought no one remembered." He enclosed a faded photo, his daughter under the old elms, hair caught in wind, light like a promise. "Thank you," he wrote. She pinned the note inside the archival sleeves box copy, not official, but true. Now, the record had a face. The basement felt warmer. A citizen's photograph anchored the policy. It would continue to do so when memory tried to unlatch. Redemption began with a quieter routine. Requests came from students, planners, and a poetry group. The city's training for managers now included a slide, sequence integrity, decisions follow votes and evidence. They used the Riverview case as an internal study. Keene attended every session, answering questions without varnish. "I was there," he said. "I let the procedure bend." He did not defend it. Admissions are a form of repair. In the park, kids kicked a ball under a new shade. Process had a pulse again. Mara revisited the DDS3 tapes, building an index of what they had once stored: minutes, drafts, emails. She wrote "Institutional Amnesia Prevention Indexing Project" on a whiteboard and felt ridiculous until it began to work. She trained a temp, a quiet woman who loved the hum of old machines. They created a shadow table tracking draft to final changes in public minutes. Sunshine learned to sit in bureaucratic chairs. "We don't keep drafts," someone protested. "We do now," Mara said, kind, decisive. The city attorney backed her with a memo. A planning commission meeting paused over a word in new minutes: inform. An early draft had said coordinate. The shadow table showed the change. "Which is it?" a commissioner asked. The clerk answered carefully. "Coordinate," he said, and revised the record on the spot. It was a small repair with a large echo. Words choose futures. The audience noticed quietly. In bureaucratic life, not all heroics are audible. Someone in that room felt a little lighter and didn't know why. Paper had stretched a net under the day. Mara visited Riverview after rain, the air thick with green. The saplings had grown a slender courage, leaving slick new ideas. A father read the plaque to his kid. "They said sorry," the kid said. He nodded. "Yeah. People can do wrong and fix it." The kid looked at the river, curious about something else now. "That's what repair is for, to get our curiosity back." Mara sat on a bench and closed her eyes. She could almost hear Nai hum. At the annual budget hearing, someone tried to trim the archives. "Nobody reads this stuff," a councilman said. Mara brought the Riverview box and set it on the dais. "This prevented a lawsuit," Daly said. "It repaired trust." The councilman laughed, then stopped when the chamber did not. They kept the funding and added a halftime position. The new posting read, "Seeking someone who likes listening to paper." She wrote it that way on purpose. The city's sense of humor was recovering. Nearing spring, Mara received an email from a university historian, found reference to a 1983 zoning variance in your ledger, missing attachments. She smiled, another box. The work would never end, which was the point. She thought of the archivist's box again, the one that began this. She wrote a note on its label: opened February 13th, series completed March 14th, public release March 16th, process revised 3:20 seconds, plaque installed 4 halves. Labels can be stories, too. A colleague added a small sticker of a leaf. No one objected. The timeline on the box taught future hands where courage had happened. A neighborhood newsletter interviewed Mara. "What's the hardest part?" "Not mistaking quiet for resolved," she said. "And not mistaking paperwork for truth, it's evidence. Truth is the shape the evidence holds over time." The editor underlined that sentence. A week later, the BA sent a donation to plant more trees, anonymous but easy to guess. The city accepted it and named the program Canopy Forward, with a rule: all plans publish drafts and consultant notes. You could feel the future learning. In the archives, the fluorescent buzz softened to a companionable drone. Mara hung a small photo of 99 near her screen. "We plant, we wait," the caption read in Mandarin and English. She took a call from Mr. Lucero. "The new trees look good," he said. "I didn't think I'd see them that big. I just needed to tell you that." She promised to keep the file close to the light. Some promises are the whole job. She turned off the scanner and let the quiet be earned. Resonance begins when others use your language. A junior planner said at a meeting, "Sequence integrity," and no one blinked like it was jargon. A citizen quoted the plaque during a budget question. The clerk, careful, chastened, steadier, wrote minutes that included who asked for drafts, not just who made motions. On a lunch break, Mara overheard two custodians discussing the visibility initiative like a legend with a moral. They laughed softly at how official words used to hide. The building carried that laughter in its vents. Mara trained new interns on phases of proof: false comfort, shifting truth, irrefutable evidence. "We don't hunt villains," she said. "We assemble sequences." She gave them the Riverview packet and watched them look up when they hit the failed vote line. "You can feel it," one said. "When the story turns." "Yes," she said. "That's the moment you breathe and keep going." They practiced oblique light photography on a test notebook. The erase line revealed itself like a confession that needed gentleness. A winter later, a burst pipe threatened the basement. Staff moved boxes like families save photo albums. Mara held the archivist's box tight under her coat, water dripping off her hair, laughter absurd in the emergency. "Put Riverview high," she told the crew. "It belongs upstairs." They built better shelving afterward, funded by a council that now knew the price of forgetting. The pipe was fixed. The memo about maintenance used the phrase "sequence integrity of prevention." Words grow. The box survived a different hazard because people cared how the first hazard had been misnamed. On a quiet afternoon, Mara wrote a letter to herself from the day she first opened the box. "You're going to be told it's nothing," she wrote. "It's something. Keep the timeline. Be kind to the anxious. Don't let the draft resolution go unlabeled." She tucked it behind the green notebook's label copy, a time capsule within a time capsule. Archives are layers of care. Sometimes we file our courage for later. She turned the lights low and let the box rest like a book with a finger holding a place. At the next staff training, the projector showed a slide with two columns, before and after. Before, director discretion, drafts optional, hazard invoked broadly. After, evidence threshold, drafts retained, hazard tied to assessment. Below, a photo of Riverview's plaque and a photo of the new elms. "This is what changed," Mara said. "Not just policy, habit." She watched a new manager's face soften into comprehension. In the doorway, Keene stood quietly, then nodded once, humble recognition becoming part of the institution's new memory. The lesson held: paper protects people when we let it. Mara closed the archivist's box and slid it into a case upstairs, behind glass with a simple card, the box that refused silence. She stepped back. The hallway hummed with the life of a building that had learned to say sorry and mean it. Outside, the elms lifted their young crowns against a winter sky that finally looked less like forgetting. She turned off the monitor. The screen's blackness held her reflection like a signature she was still writing. This story is inspired by true events. Names and details have been changed to protect privacy. If you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, subscribe to this channel and never miss the next case where truth prevails.